Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Politics Relaxed. It's good to see you. It's been a bit of a break, but let's get straight into it. We're going to be talking about Rwanda and the bill that passed this week. Yeah, let's start on the bill, and then we can go on to the amendments and to the resignations and all the chaos that was happening around the bill.
Well, I'm happy to speak in support of the bill, of course. For the whole run of the Rwanda policy, I've spoken in support of the policy in general, and I think this is the right pragmatic next step to make the Rwanda Migration and Economic Development Partnership happen. I'm not going to say that again. So yeah, I'm delighted. Really, we got it through Parliament, and the importance of it is that it puts into primary legislation that Rwanda is a safe country. This is important. We can now operationalize the partnership. We can now start to send off flights to Rwanda, and it reasserts the control of our elected officials over unelected officials in the Supreme Court. Obviously, there are certain wings of the party that would have liked to have seen us go further in aspects of reasserting that executive dominance. But I'm very content with this as a first pragmatic step in making sure the Rwanda plan happens, and so that we can break the business model of the people smugglers, and so that we can deter migration across the channel in future.
Here's here's my issue. Like, the Supreme Court has said Rwanda is not a safe country, and now basically, and they are legal experts. The MPs we have might be elected, they might be representatives of the people, but they are not legal experts. They are not in any position, in any stronger position than the Supreme Court to just say, okay, well, so Rwanda's safe. Why? Because Parliament thinks so. That's not really, I think, a very good way of going about things. I think we should go about things to make sure that, I mean, one, I don't support the policy in the first place, but in the second instance, we shouldn't be sending people to places that are not safe when the Supreme Court says they are not safe. I think that's a pretty kind of basic standard, is to send people at the very least to a safe country, but we shouldn't be sending people to any country in the first place. We should be helping asylum seekers in this country. We should be sorting out the mess of the asylum system, the Tories' mess that they have made after austerity, after cuts, and that's what we should be focusing on, not spending millions and millions of pounds that could go elsewhere on a system that is never going to work and is not going to be sending any planes off the ground. Let's be clear, no planes have gone off the ground. How many years have they been trying to do this? And we somehow expect this third bill is going to work. I'm not sure if it is, but even if to be honest, I hope it doesn't.
It's not the way to do it, but it's the Tories' way of doing it. We know the Tories are corrupt. We've known that they're corrupt, and they will break any law in the rule book to try and push through their policies. Now, I wouldn't say that I disagree with the bill completely, but there's certain elements of the bill that I do disagree with. I believe that we should follow the human rights law, which most of the bill does go against. But I do believe that we need a process of sending immigrants to either a different country or processing them in a safe way because we are, as a country, we are overwhelmed with the amount of people that are in this country and the
Uh, I'm not sure we are overwhelmed. I think it's a kind of that you have certain papers that want to push like this message that we are overwhelmed, and then the reasons they point to for this country being overwhelmed is the NHS isn't working. Well, the reason the NHS isn't working is because the Conservative government have continually underfunded the NHS. They say that our schools aren't working. Why are the schools not working? The schools aren't working because they haven't been funded by the Tories. It's nothing to do with immigration. And actually, I mean, look, the Tories have already introduced a points-based system where they say it's one in, one out. So we're actually not increasing our immigration anyway. So I'm not sure I completely buy that idea.
I wouldn't say that I'm in support of the Tory party because I'm far from it. But to say that the NHS is profoundly to blame of the Tory party, yes, it is. But it's also to do with the leadership of those in NHS. But that's a whole different point and a whole different story. I still support the point that yes, illegal immigrants should come out to the country for the better for themselves because they're obviously fleeing, whether it is whatever they're basically fleeing from, whether it's for their safety or for a better future for their children. But I do believe that there is a way about it. And I don't believe that if we're not going to be sending any immigrants to Rwanda, we no longer should be sending taxpayers' money to a country that we're not sending immigrants to. We have sent more money to Rwanda than immigrants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's undeniable that so far there have been a lot of obstacles in the way, and it's very unfortunate. The key thing is that, from my perspective, this is the last obstacle that we have removed. We can now get this policy up and running. You know, with regards to the legality of it, obviously the fact is that Parliament is the ultimate lawmaking body in our country. They have made the law. Rwanda is now a safe country in the eyes of the law, and there we go. So it's all good. There is no historical precedence for the Supreme Court to decide which countries are safe or not. So that is only a very recent thing since the Rights Act. And in my opinion, we should be moving away from the idea that the Supreme Court can exercise judicial review over the executive anyway. On the other points, I agree with Reese. I agree that migration is too high. Legal migration is too high as well. And I think that we need to strengthen the points-based system that you mentioned earlier. I'm sure James Cleverly will set out ways to do that in the future. In terms of illegal migration, we've made so much progress with the Albania deal. Clearly, there's been a fall by a third in the number of migrants crossing the channel last year. And I want to see that continue. And that's why this deal is in place, so that we can break the model of the people smugglers, and we can use it as a major deterrent so that we can bring those numbers down even further. And by the way, it's not just because I think the country has the potential to be overwhelmed. It's actually the compassionate thing to do, because we don't want people to be traveling across the channel very unsafely, potentially dying. And this is a proper deterrent measure in my eyes for us to help stop
We don't
that.
want people going to an unsafe country, even though it's legally deemed safe.
Here's where my major issue is with what you said. Look, I don't want people crossing the channel. I don't think there are many people that want people crossing the channel and risking their lives to get over to this country. But is the channel and the crossings of the channel not itself showing that deterrents do not work? The risks that people are taking to come across the channel, they're risking death, they're risking like serious injury. Is that not a deterrent enough? And that in itself proves that deterrents are not going to be effective against these people coming across the channel. What would be much more effective is setting up good schemes in place across different places across the world, and then bringing people that are at serious risk across from those countries and making it a lot more safe. That's the way that you create a safe migration system for asylum seekers. It's not doing this deterrent system that's cost £100 million and is probably not going to work. It's giving safe and legal routes to migrants, which we have failed to do.
So what I would come back on there is, you know, the fact is that the reason why the people are making these crossings is because they have the hope that on the other end they're going to be able to settle in the UK. And what this bill does is it prompts a response within them that now, where is that hope on the other side? You know, you're going to get sent to Rwanda. Some people might want to get sent to Rwanda. You know, I've mentioned before their working age is very low. You know, it's I think 19. So they need good, strong workers. And frankly, the vast majority of the people crossing the channel are men with age between sort of 25 and 38 anyway. So, you know, if you want to find a decent life and employment, then Rwanda might not be the worst option. But if you're looking to settle in the UK, this will act as a deterrent to you, because even though you're taking all those risks along the way, the chances of actually being able to settle in the UK are extremely slim. And so that's why I think it will be an effective deterrent.
I just still think the most effective way that you stop the people trafficking and you stop the channel crossings is you give safe and legal routes. That's the way, because it breaks the people smugglers' business model. Instead, as like we've seen, look, Rwanda is not a safe country according to the Supreme Court, and I much prefer listening to the Supreme Court than I do Tory MPs that have practically ruined this country for the last 12 years. So I'm not convinced by the Rwanda scheme. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's extremely expensive for how many Home Secretaries have we got in Kigali? Have we got going over to Kigali and shaking hands? And how many migrants have we got in Rwanda? This is not a scheme that's going to work. It's a scheme that's destined to fail, and the Tories will continually bring this out, and they'll say, "Look at the lefty lawyers, look at the Labour Party. They all love immigration, and they love people risking their lives in the Channel, and they'll keep on doing this because they know it's a vote winner." And I, and that's the only reason they're going to carry on doing this. And I'm sure the next election, the Tory Party will try to fight it on Rwanda, but I'm hoping that they won't win it on Rwanda.
One thing I will say on the point about safe and legal routes is that we've spoken about this so many times before, as you know, in so many debates in the past, and you know that I'm in support of safe and legal routes, and we have a number of them in place. It's not that I'm against expanding safe and legal routes, but to give credit to the government, there have been very high numbers of people resettled under the multiple safe and legal routes that we have already. Since this government were elected, I think we've seen over 200,000 people resettled through safe and legal routes. So we do have some effective safe and legal routes in place. And I think that's a positive, but we can't just put all our eggs in one basket. We have to have a multifaceted approach to dealing with such a complex issue as migration. You know, it's the little things like, for instance, the role of migration minister was split into a minister for legal and a minister for illegal migration. We need to have different approaches to these different issues. And we need to have different approaches to dealing with people who want to settle elsewhere but are remaining in the countries, and the people who are making the dangerous journeys across the Channel.
What I don't believe though is how much money we have spent on this. I'm going to call it a project. How much money we spent on this project to send refugees to a country that may or may not be safe, however you want to see it, and how we haven't sent not a single refugee there. And what I don't understand is why we're not working with our partners in France to ensure that we can work with our neighbors to ensure that these illegal migrants that are making the crossing across the Channel stay in France. That's what I don't understand.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I think this PM, more than any previous PM, has been making successful headway with other European countries. You look at the Albania deal that I mentioned earlier, that has completely plummeted the numbers of Albanians crossing the Channel.
Maybe
But
because
also in March last year, he agreed some big measures to tackle illegal migration with France. So the PM is going in the right direction with this. We need to work with France. You're right. We need to work with our other European partners to reduce this. But I think the Conservatives are the right party to continue doing that, and we need time to implement the plan.
Cameron, I want to come back because you said something slightly disingenuous about the legal route. Because we obviously have the Ukraine scheme, right? The Ukraine scheme has worked, but if you look at the rest of the supposedly legal routes that exist, the system in Afghanistan was a complete and utter failure. There's nothing in France to try and help some of the people that are stuck in these camps, and it's obvious that the legal schemes have not worked because the Tory government have not effectively funded migration and the way not effectively funded how we deal with migration. They've not effectively funded these legal routes, and they've not really given a serious effort to these legal routes because most of them have not worked. Other than Ukraine, if we take Ukraine to the side, the rest of the legal routes have not worked.
Before that point, my question, what I really want answered is, we've seen, I think it was 2 days ago, the president of Rwanda said that if no illegal migrants or migrants in a whole comes to Rwanda, he will hand back taxpayers' money. If that happens, what would the Tory party end up doing? Saying no, we can't accept them and leave them on the waters, or will they have no choice to bring them into our shores?
Look, what I'd say is that flights are going to take off to Rwanda now. Now that Rwanda is deemed a safe country, we're going to see flights leaving by the next election. I have no doubt in my mind about that. Look, should the highly hypothetical situation that you described happen, then it would be necessary for the Conservatives to eat a slice of humble pie and accept the return of taxpayers' money, of course. And but that's not going to happen because everything is in place. Everything is in place now to operationalize this deal and to make it happen in the coming months. In terms of what we would do with the issue of migration, so clearly things would continue as they are. But one thing that's critical is that if things did continue as they were, then within the next 5 years, there would not be anyone crossing the channel anymore, because in the last year, the numbers were down a third. So there's no issue with how we're dealing with things at the moment, because the numbers are falling. But this is just another major thing that will help to act as a deterrent and will bring down the numbers much faster than they would be otherwise.
And on the legal routes.
And on the legal routes. Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's not disingenuous, because I backed it up with evidence. As I said, since this government was elected, we've had over 200,000 people resettled through safe and legal routes. We have a number of safe and legal routes. You mentioned the Ukrainian one. Clearly, that's been highly successful. We also have the Hong Kong BNO scheme, which is a critical one. The biggest one, which no one really pays attention to, is the sort of more broad brush UK resettlement scheme. And that deals with people from Iraq, Sudan, Syria, Ethiopia, Afghanistan is included in that now as well, Somalia, all sorts of places, Yemen as well, obviously critical at the moment. So we have a lot of safe and legal schemes that do cover a wide range of countries.
I mean, look, you just have to look at the failings in our current migration system, right? There's, number one, we have a huge backlog within this country. And I hope when Labour get into government, they are going to much more effectively deal with that backlog, because they're willing to fund the migration system, unlike the Conservative Party, who'd rather spend their time on these kind of pet projects for their Home Secretaries to win elections. Labour are interested in winning elections, but Labour aren't interested in playing politics over migration. They're interested in, I hope they're going to be interested in actually sorting this issue out and making sure that our country does its bit on the world stage to help people, the most vulnerable people in the world. So that's why it's really important that they fund legal routes, first of all, and they also make sure that the backlog is being dealt with, which is not currently being dealt with. I mean, you could go and take that money that's been sent to Rwanda and you could put it straight into the backlog, and it would be a much more effective use of taxpayers' money. But instead, it's just going to go to, like, what was Suella Braverman's pet project, what is now going to be James Cleverly's pet project. Yeah, let's move on to the kind of drama surrounding the vote. We had Brendan Clark-Smith and Lee Anderson resign as two Tory chairs. I'm pretty sure they have a fair few of them left, because Rishi Sunak decided to appoint quite a lot of deputy chairs. And there were obviously the amendments, which were supported by 60 people. But much to my disappointment, the bill itself passed quite easily. And I think there was no real doubt by Wednesday that it was going to pass.
To be fair, on that topic, it's hilarious. I love watching Tory party fighting within and all their MPs fighting within, because it just shows how their leader can't rip on to his own people. It amazes me how some of them said, if the bill's not made strong enough, we will resign. The other half said, if it's not made with accordance to human rights law, we'll resign. Did any of them resign? No. How many of them resigned? About 2, 3?
Three, yeah.
Three resigned out of how many rebels? It is a joke. The people that we now have in government are a joke. It's like going out to a circus and watching a clown. The government is a clown. They are a joke.
So I would disagree with that sentiment.
I was hoping you would.
Look, I get it. The last few years haven't been easy. We have Brexit, we have the pandemic, and obviously under Boris Johnson, there was a period of scandals, and we've addressed them all many times before. And I understand why people are frustrated. And you know, when I've been bearing the brunt of those frustrations, that makes me understand it even more. Believe me. But you know, I still have faith. I still have faith in Rishi Sunak. I voted him from the beginning. In the leadership election, in the first leadership election, I think he's the right guy, and actually, I think he's made a lot of really good progress as PM. I think between him and Starmer, in my eyes, it is him who's setting out the greater vision for the future of our country. We have a very strong team in government, and it hasn't been weakened by their losses. That being said, look, the Conservative Party is and always will be a broad church. We have a wide range of views. As Reece pointed out, there are people who believe that this bill went too far, and there are people that believe we need to do a lot more in regards to the Supreme Court. But, you know, that's why Rishi Sunak has to drive a path of compromise. If he sides with one or the other, he would have suffered much worse consequences than he did otherwise. And, you know, every Conservative leader has to do the same because the Conservative Party is such a broad church. I believe in compromise and pragmatism, and Rishi Sunak is a beacon of those.
I very, very rarely praise the Conservatives, but from a purely neutral standpoint, the kind of politicking that Rishi Sunak was able to do to get this through was impressive. To get two sides of such a divided party to somehow come together and actually vote on this was, and to win that overall vote was pretty impressive. I mean, on the actual resignations, I mean, it was the thing I found extremely funny was when Lee Anderson was being interviewed by GB News after the vote. And the reason he gave for not voting against this bill is because the Labour MPs were laughing at him for going into the lobby. Not out of principle. He didn't abstain out of principle. He didn't abstain because he really felt it in his heart of hearts. He couldn't, the guy that is always out there on the front line shouting about Labour and shouting about woke lefty lawyers couldn't deal with being laughed at in the lobbies. And that's the kind of ridiculousness we're up to in this final chapter of a Conservative government that have basically been a joke for the last few years. But the serious point is, this is a very serious bill. This is a bill that deals with people's lives. And to have that as the reason you don't vote for something or vote against something is, I mean, it's a joke, isn't it?
Well, that's why I think that's one of the reasons I think he's one of the weaker MPs, and why I don't think he'll be a loss to Rishi Sunak or the government. I think, but look, the Conservative vision at the moment is one I can totally get behind. We're going into an election this year, and I will be voting Conservative. I would urge everyone to do the same because Rishi Sunak is the right guy to continue taking us forward. We need. There's a big refresh going on in the parliamentary party, by the way. Lots of MPs who you might not like, they're going to be going. So there's some new guys coming in. They're going to be great, I'm sure. So we need the parliamentary party to get back together under the leadership of Rishi Sunak after the next election, and we need to continue dealing with key issues like the illegal migration we've been talking about today.
How have you turned this into a pitch for the Conservative Party? I really just like how you've turned our little topic about Lee Anderson resigning, and you've somehow now turned it into an election pitch for the Conservative Party. I feel like I'm on the doorstep. Like, come on.
I will say, if we get more young people like Cameron in the Tory party, then maybe I'll have some hope of another 5 years of Tory party. But till then, Labour is the way to go.
Well, we'll have to disagree on that one.
With the 2024 hustings over, thank you very much to you for watching the video. Thanks to you all for coming, as always, and giving your views. We've got some very exciting news coming up soon, so stay tuned to all our social media. And with that, we'll see you soon. Thank you for watching.